Hi, this is Rick, and we're going to fill out a project charter. There's an example of a project charter on page 96 in your book, and that's probably the best place to start. But we're going to go down this form line by line so that you understand exactly how to fill it in. Let's start with the big picture, however. The project charter is usually used for three different reasons. Number one, it authorizes the project. Now, when we fill out the work request, we're just saying this is a good idea. What do you think? And when the project committee comes back and says, we think it's really good, what they do is they issue a project charter. So this kind of defines the project, it authorizes the project, it budgets the project, it does all kinds of things, but it actually gets the project underway. Secondly, it provides a high-level overview of what's in the project. This is kind of the conception that they have of what the project should do. When there are any disputes about what the project should do or not do, you come back to the project charter and say, oh, no, see, this is what they approved. The last thing it does, and you notice this at the bottom of the form, it identifies the main stakeholders. So at that point, it puts people on the committee, it assigns people different tasks, it actually staffs the HR portion of the project itself. It'll also include the name of the project owner or the project sponsor who's going to fund it, and it'll actually address the goals, the objectives. For the first time, it'll address things like risk and a detailed budget. So there's a lot here. And the main reason that you have this is to initiate the project and to identify the high level overview and the stakeholders. But there's one little hidden meaning here too, and that is it keeps the project from having what is called scope creep. Now, that's not a person. That's actually the way project kind of takes on a little bit more than what it was initially designed to do. In other words, if you're designing a user interface for a program and they say, well, it'd be really neat if we could choose our own colors. Okay, that wasn't in the project charter. So if it's not in the project charter, they need to submit a change request, which is a way that the project charter can be modified legally. So let's go ahead and start with filling in each portion of the project charter. You'll notice that this project charter has been filled in a little bit, and that's to give you a better example of what to put into your project charter. You'll notice at the top it starts with the project serial number. I just made this number up. It's just kind of a Yahoo. I mean, it's whatever you want to put there. The title of the project is what was approved as the title of your project from the work request. And you notice it's got a start date and a finish date. That came from the work request as well. You are the project manager. And you'll notice that it's got total cost plus or minus 10% here. Now, these are pretty specific numbers. You'll notice that instead of having a number that is frozen, it's got a not to exceed value here. So we're going to say it's not to exceed $17,000 and it's not to exceed 300 man hours of labor. So at that point, it's got two constraints on it, either of which can stop the project cold. Go down to the ROI. This was a calculated ROI based on the amount of money that we are spending versus the amount of benefit that we get out of it. And you'll notice then that we've got the payback point plus or minus 10%. That may be a date, either in terms of days, weeks, months, or years. But the idea is that this payback is going to be immediate in the sense that we're going to use it immediately and enjoy the fact that our image on the computers is up to date. So let's now jump down into the details of the project itself. You'll notice that the first one is project purpose or justification. Now, this is a good project purpose or justification, and I'll let you read that. The reason we need a current image is not stated, but that's because we actually have a currency as part of our charter as the school. So the idea here is that the project is to create a current, and that's the current computer software image. So they're going to create it and they're going to install it in the classroom and in all the learning centers on the Dell computers. Notice it's pretty specific. The more specific it is, the better. We get down to measurable project objectives, and this is a listing of what we expect to be able to measure. If this doesn't happen in this order, there's something wrong. So, for example, we would have a tendency to skip over the testing. maybe, or the repeated faculty approvals on all the changes. Those are the kind of things that need to be done in order so that we would put those down as objectives. Notice that they're not very specific. They don't have any measurable time. They don't have any measurable quality at all. It's just their objectives. And, so there's nobody responsible for them either. So at that point, those things are yet to be decided. High-level requirements, well, you'll notice that these are the things that we need to keep on going. They need to have the Computer Tech Committee. That's a special committee that's going to be formed just for this particular project. They need to have the latest operating system, and they need to have a listing of all the programs needed, and they need to have a listing of all the rights that they have for those programs. So those are the high-level requirements. That list can be extensive or as extensive as you want it to be. But notice how these particular spots have, these particular frames have expanded to fit the need. Because of the high level requirements, we've got some milestones that we need to meet. And these are going to be specifically branded as things that need to be done by a certain date. So you notice the first one, first deliverable is the initial image, and that's going to be done by July 1st. And the tech team is going to do that. So they're going to actually have the project. The project is going to start June 15th, but it's actually the first deliverable is on July 1st. Then we've got another deliverable on August 15th, and the final deliverable on September 30th. Now, you notice the project doesn't end until October 10th. That's when all the surveys are tallied, because our success criteria is a final faculty satisfaction survey score of 90 out of 100. So at that point, we need to have some kind of survey developed, and we need to have that measurement. Then we've got some high-level risk. These are things that we may encounter that we don't necessarily have as highlights right now, but we're not sure. So one of the risks might be that there's some unexpected licensing issues. Sometimes licensing isn't available, or the program was public domain at one time, or what they call freeware or shareware, but now it's a purchasable program. So the idea is that that may be an issue as we look into the different programs that are going to go in the image. There's maybe hardware compatibility issues because an image is hardware specific in many cases. At that point, we may have to either replace the hardware or modify the image. The last piece on this particular page is the budget summary, and these are just things that we would spend money on. So we're only going to spend money on two things, the licensing and the labor. Those are our two limits. Now the sources are going to be facilities. They're the ones that have the money for this. The cost then is the upper limit of $17,000 in terms of licensing money, and labor 300 man hours. So that's the bulk of the project charter for the project itself. Because we inserted so many different lines in here, you'll notice that we have gone to a second page, and that's fine. So this is page 2, and here's our key stockholder list. Notice it starts off with the champion, and then it's got our sponsor, the person who's going to pay for it, and then it's got the project manager, and then it's got the faculty committee chair and the tech team. They're all part of stakeholders in this particular project, even though they may not be directly on a committee or anything like that. And you'll notice that we included their role that they're going to play in the project, the position that they normally have. Then we've got the contact info, extremely important to put that in there. And then for purposes of this class, we've got the Myers-Briggs type, so we realize how to communicate with each individual in that list. Same is true for the project team members. You'll notice that these are people that are on the team that would meet on a regular basis, that are not necessarily stakeholders, but they are people that are going to do a lot of the work. So we've got an image consultant. Notice they're an outside consultancy. And then we've got 4 members of staff here, faculty and staff here. We've got 2 professors gathering all the image requirements. They're probably on that committee with that key stakeholder on the upper list. And then we've got a person in charge of testing, and they work for facilities. And then we've got a person in charge of the survey, and they work for facilities. And of course, we've got the funding sponsor at the bottom. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you how to do was add lines to this form, and that's really simple. So I'm going to switch back to the blank form and show you how to do that. Well, if we want to add more lines to this particular frame, all we do is click in it and press enter, and of course it opens up just like any table would. But let's say that we need down here to have a couple more milestones, and that's really simple to do. I'm going to go to the selection area here on the left-hand edge of the document, and I'm going to right mouse, and I'm going to say copy, and it's going to copy that row. And then I'm going to go right back here, right mouse again, and I'm going to say paste rows. And notice it gives me a blank line so that I can expand this as I need to. The nice thing about that is you can have as many lines as you'd like, and the form just continues to ratchet on down and give you that space.